Finds himself at a pivotal crossroads this week. He's currently in Washington, D.C. for a highly anticipated meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump. On the surface, it's a diplomatic engagement between two leaders, but beneath it lies a deeper ideological clash between a president shaped by the struggle for liberation and reconciliation and another who has built political capital on what many might say racial scapegoating and isolationism. While Ramaphosa seeks to secure trade deals and energy cooperation, he walks into a room charged with racial symbolism and global political tension. And he's the current head of the G20 and a voice for the global South, really. Ramaphosa may carry more than just South Africa's hopes. He could well be representative of an entire continent in the face of an administration that has repeatedly undermined it. And to help us unpack the stakes, the symbolism, and the potential outcomes of this critical US-SA encounter, we are joined now by Patrick Lukusa Kadima, as a lecturer at Wits Business School, specializing in international law, global geopolitics, international cooperation, and multilateralism. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate your time. I want to kickstart the conversation with just outside of, the social media posts that we've seen, the rants that we've seen on various news agencies. On a real diplomatic level, how would you quickly assess the relationship between the United States of America and South Africa at this point?
Um, Good morning and good morning to your listeners and your viewers. We all know and we're all aware that the relationship between the United States of America and South Africa has been strained for quite some time. We have seen the events that took place over the past few months. And, now we look forward to seeing what this weekend visit by the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, will hold, with regards to his engagements with Donald Trump.
Mm, mm, mm. When it comes to some of the key issues that President Cyril Ramaphosa should be kickstarting these engagements with, what would you say should be at the top of the agenda? What should be on top of his list to try and engage with Donald Trump on?
Yeah, I mean, there are various issues that need to be spoken about, trade relations. There are issues of diplomatic relations that need to be spoken about between America and South Africa. There's also the issue of, the G20 presidency that South Africa holds. That is vital because President Ramaphosa is not only now acting in his capacity as South African president, but he will have to also, act in his capacity as the G20 president to ensure that America, as the incoming presidency of the G20, will be able to fully participate without any conditions or preconditions in the meetings of the G20.
Mm, mm. Donald Trump is insistent that there's a white genocide currently happening here in South Africa. He's pushed the narrative of Afrikaans refugees. We saw 49, 50, whatever number of them make their way to the United States of America. Does Ramaphosa risk legitimizing those views by not directly addressing them in this meeting? With a lot of people saying he should be focusing on trade and business and maybe not touching as much, to these white genocide sentiment that Donald Trump is insistent on. How does he tackle this one? Does he leave it as is, or does he tackle it and try to debunk those myths that Donald Trump seems to be so convinced on?
No, he needs to debunk them, obviously. There is no way that he's going to speak about trade. He's going to speak about all other issues, but not speak about the elephant in the room, which is this misinformation about white genocide that many countries, even in the global north, even the European Union itself acknowledges there is nothing such as that happening in the country. So he needs to tackle that. He needs to make sure that he speaks to Donald Trump, he speaks to his associates, he speaks to his advisors, he speaks to his cabinet members that there is no such thing as a genocide happening in America. And I'm sure they are aware of that themselves, that there is no such a thing happening in South Africa. And therefore, he needs to tackle that so that it needs to stop, because the misinformation is hurting the standing of the country on the global stage, and so on and so forth.
Mm, mm, mm. The two most high-profile meetings involving Trump and other leaders in the White House recently, maybe I can say this year, have been with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and also the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. And we saw how those meetings panned out. We saw how aggressive and how dismissive Trump was, to those two leaders, essentially. Could we risk seeing the same thing with President Ramaphosa, where a lot of people fear that he might be dismissed, he might be embarrassed in front of cameras and treated like a non-factor, essentially, as we've seen that being the trend with Trump in recent times.
I don't know. I don't know. It will be difficult to answer. That question. You're talking about somebody who acts in the moment, so it will be very
Mm,
difficult to answer. We'll just have to wait and see, just like each and everyone. But I mean, the president, is a different type of leader. Having, when one undertakes the studying of the president and what he has done and how he undertakes his foreign policy, he seems to have these different types of skill, and character and personal trait that seems to even charm, those tough leaders, or those leaders that one may see as tough. So, but we'll have to wait and see how it pans out.
mm, mm. Let's take a look at who President Ramaphosa took with him to this trip. One notable member of his entourage is John Steenhuisen, the Minister of Agriculture, a white South African. Do you think this was strategic? Do you think this was purposefully done by President Ramaphosa to have a Minister of Agriculture who's white to be part of this entourage to try and debunk those myths? And will it work?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it was the person best to answer that is the spokesperson in the presidency.
Mm,
What I think is that, looking at his entourage, I think he has selected very carefully the ministers that are supposed to accompany him. Given the relationship between South Africa and the United States of America. I mean, John Steenhuisen is the Minister of Agriculture, and therefore, agriculture plays a very important role for this country. We export a lot of fruits and vegetables to different countries, and I think his presence there will also be there to set the foundation that talks can continue in various areas of diplomatic relations. Not so much only about the diplomatic relations as we know it as between ambassadors and so on and so forth, but as well as trade ties, economic ties, and so on and so forth. So I think he chose he carefully curated the entourage, also with the minister in the presidency, who is seen also as a senior cabinet member, to accompany him. So we'll have to wait and see how all these things plays out.
mm. And lastly, before I let you go, Patrick, what should South Africans consider a success, from this trip? What would be considered good news as President Ramaphosa comes back from Washington, D.C. To give feedback to South Africans about how the trip went?
I don't know what should be considered a success. I mean, these are mainly just talks, after a rocky relationship. But I think the most immediate success that everyone wants to hear is probably, that they said and there were constructive talks and there is a constructive path being drawn, so that the relationships could be restored to what it was, in previous years. So we'll have to wait and see. But I mean, for any long-term success, if these talks are going to yield any long-term success, then we'll have to wait to see in the next coming few months and years during the Trump administration whether these talks were indeed successful or whether they just ended up being just talks.
No, definitely. Lecturer at Wits Business School, focusing on international law, global geopolitics, and international cooperation and multilateralism. Patrick Lukusa Kadima, thank you so much for giving us your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
There you go. Yeah. What do you think? Eh? What do you think would be considered a success from President Cyril Ramaphosa's visit to the United States of America? Ramaphosa, many consider him a master in chief negotiator. I think navigates one of the most diplomatically delicate moments of his presidency. This could be a make it or break it, moment for his legacy as South Africa's president. And it'll be interesting how he goes about navigating, and will he show, the true leadership style that many say he possesses. Chief negotiator, was pivotal, during Codesa, a unionist of note. So yeah, I think we want to see all of that, being portrayed by the president, because the stakes are really, really high, and not just for his presidency. The stakes are, not only bilateral, but I think they're symbolic, they're economic, and deeply political. And whether or not the visit yields a breakthrough, which we all hope it does, a clash of ideologies, or simply a photo op with no fallout, is one thing that we don't want to see. I think, as Patrick mentioned there, that we don't want this to be a talk shop. This should be a moment where South Africans understand just how important the United States of America is to our country. You might agree or disagree with their politics, as many of us do, but one thing is clear: we do need the United States of America, but we also, as Africa, we need to have a voice that is being heard in the corridors of American power. And it'll be interesting to see if Ramaphosa comes with the good news that he has. But yeah, one thing interesting for me is it looks strategic, having John Hayes in there as part of his entourage. He's a white South African minister of agriculture, so he would be very vital and key to these talks, as he represents everything that Donald Trump seems to think South Africa is against. Okay, really interesting times. We have some comments from Abdullah Shabalala. The moment Ramaphosa steps on the plane back, Trump is going to immediately carry on peddling the white genocide narrative and probably accuse South Africa of being a Hamas Iranian puppet again. In the meantime, let's hope these refugees from South Africa enjoy paying 10 times the rent. USA is like living in a hill, bro, but the rent is 30,000 a month. We need the US, sure, but we need the BRICS Plus immeasurably more. And I couldn't agree with you more, Abdul Shabalala. Thank you so much for engaging with us. As I mentioned in the beginning of this interview, I put up a poll on our social media pages. I wonder if X can just put it up quickly. So essentially, the poll was on this visit. If you want to vote, you want to be part of the poll. There's still 6 hours and 59 minutes on it. And we essentially asked the question: Ramaphosa meets Trump this week to reset USA, United States of America ties. Trump's insistence on a white genocide in South Africa and Gaza opposition have raised tensions. The question is, how should President Ramaphosa play it? Should it be firm and fearless? Well, 60% of you guys seem to think so. And then another 10% feel he should be avoiding the ICJ topic. He shouldn't be touching it because that's a sore point for the United States of America. Some argue it is the reason why we are here today. Another 10% seem to believe that, well, Ramaphosa should be playing it diplomatically. Should be handshaking, high fives. Let's see where we can meet each other, common ground. And another 20% of you guys believe Ramaphosa should just focus on trade. So business, 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 nothing more, nothing less. That's what we want. We want money, we want investments, we want those kind of relations with the United States of America to continue. We don't have to agree on the politics of the day, but We want your business. You also need us to some extent. And I think we should not forget that aspect that the United States of America needs us, maybe not as much as we need them, but we are very, very important and integral when it comes to their relations with us and the rest of the continent. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting day tomorrow. We'll try as much as we can to bring you voices coming out of the United States of America and to broadcast that meeting between President Trump and President Ramaphosa live on our various social media pages. We're going to take a quick break. News and Views does continue after this.